Today, we are going to talk about what happens when you look around and notice that you are different from everyone else in the room, and then something incredible happens. I'm Cameron. I spent years building my career and creating a life I loved. And when my Prince Charming finally showed up, he had 4 kids in tow. Fast forward through lots of mistakes made and lessons learned, step family life was much more complicated than I realized. If you're looking for help with blended family life, you're in the right place. Welcome to the Stepmom Diaries, where we keep it real as we dish about all the things. This is your weekly dose of blended family inspiration and encouragement. You're not the wicked stepmother, so let me help you find your fairy tale ending. Come on, let's do this. Welcome. So I have to share something with you today that happened to me recently, and it is one of those moments that seems really small on the surface, but I think it represents something huge. It's about growth that doesn't always announce itself, but shows up very quietly in moments that you realize after the fact would have sent you into a spiral. So we went recently to my stepdaughter's sorority parents' weekend. It was so much fun. We had a great weekend. We had like a Friday night reception and then Saturday football tailgate, and did around with her all weekend. Went to a football game. It was just such a lovely weekend. Got to meet her roommates' parents, and that was a lot of fun. But as we're at one of the parents' events, I start noticing that, the pins are really big now, like the big pins that people wear to football games. And so for sororities, it's like, whatever the sorority, KD mom, or, Katie's love University of Texas, or love the Longhorns, whatever. So my stepdaughter had given us pins to wear, and mine said, Katie loves the Longhorns or whatever. And I noticed that the moms at this event all had pins on their shirts that identified them as moms, Katie moms. And it dawned on me that I didn't have one. I'm not a mom, right? Like, I'm her stepmom. And I didn't expect her to give me a mom pin, right? But it sort of underscored, like, I'm not like the others. Now, it's not like there's some conspiracy to exclude stepmoms from this, right? I'm sure that these pins are ordered, by the parents group or by the girls through some process that, I don't even know how many stepmoms there would be in the group. It is just not, it's one of those things that just happens when you're a stepmom, right? It's these little reminders that are completely unintentional that you exist slightly outside of the family structure that, might be considered traditional. But here's what's crazy about that moment, right? So I looked around and noticed that I didn't have a pin that was the same as the other moms. Probably if this had happened a few years ago, I would have spiraled. I would have spent the weekend analyzing every glance from another mom, every conversation, every interaction through the lens of, what do they think of me? Do they know that I'm not a real mom? Should I even be here? I would have been completely overtaken by those thoughts, but it didn't happen. It didn't happen this time. And that difference, that growth, is what I wanted to talk to you about today, because when we work on how we feel about step family life, that growth that we take on doesn't always look like those big dramatic moments, right? Sometimes it is just standing in a crowd of sorority moms, noticing you don't have the same pin, and choosing peace over panic, right? So I want to just set the scene a little more clearly, because I want you to understand why this was such a potential trigger moment. So we're at Parents Weekend, right? That's already loaded territory for stepmoms. These events are essentially designed around the traditional nuclear family model. It is not anything against college life or sorority life or any of that stuff. But there are activities for, moms and daughters. There are photos being taken of families, and everyone just assumes that the adults present are the biological parents. And don't get me started on there's a parents' weekend, there's a mom's weekend, and there's dad's weekend. There's no stepmom's weekend, right? So it's all built around this sort of nuclear family model. So we're walking around and I start noticing these pins. And, they're small. They're a couple inches with the sorority letters and mom written underneath. And it's part of the uniform for the day, part of the club. And I don't have one. And my first thought, and I'm being totally honest here, was I wonder if anybody notices that mine looks different. That is the voice. That's the voice that says you don't quite belong here, right? That's the voice that comes up for stepmoms that is ready to point out all the ways you're different, all the ways that you are less than, all the ways that you are not the real thing. You're not a real parent. And for a moment, I could feel that old pattern trying to kick in. I could feel the urge to scan the crowd, see if anyone was looking at me, that temptation to feel embarrassed or ashamed, the pull to make it mean something about my worth or my place in my stepdaughter's life. Because here's what those moments trigger for so many of us. The fear that we are playing dress up in someone else's life, that we are pretending to be something that we are not, and that everyone else can see that we don't really belong. Right? If you are listening to this and you are a stepmom, I bet you have felt that before. It's like wearing a name tag that says, "Hi, I'm the stepmom," while everyone else just gets to be mom. It is subtle, but it stings. And what makes it even more complicated is that these feelings are totally understandable, but also completely irrational, right? Of course I belong at my stepdaughter's parents' weekend. Of course she wants me there. She and I are really close. Of course my relationship with her is real and valuable and important. And I know she loves me and I love her. But trauma and insecurity do not operate from the logical part of our brains, right? They operate from the part that is always looking around for evidence that we are not safe, not welcome, and not enough. So I was there at Parents' Weekend and I had a choice. And in that split second, I could let that thought take root and I could spend all afternoon self-doubting, comparing, or I could do something different, right? So if this had happened a few years ago, I want to tell you what it would have meant, because I think that probably you might see yourself in this story. I think that I would have been immediately hyper aware of every interaction I had for the rest of the day. Every conversation with another parent would have been filtered through the lens of, do they see me as different? Have they heard anything about me? Are they treating me like I don't belong here? I would have started analyzing body language. Does that mom seem less friendly to me than the others? Did she look at my pen and wonder why it didn't say mom? Is she going to ask me how long I've been in the family? Then the mental gymnastics would have kicked in. I would have started telling myself stories about what everybody's thinking. She's probably wondering why I'm here if I'm just the stepmom. She probably thinks it's weird that I came to Parents' Weekend. I wonder if they're talking about me. And that's where it gets really insidious. I would have started questioning everything. Maybe I shouldn't have come. Maybe my stepdaughter was embarrassed of me. Maybe I was overstepping by being here. Maybe this really is one of those things that's only meant for bio moms. And maybe I just, should have let my husband go. The spiral would have been complete when I started making it about my worth as a person. I'm always the outsider. I never fit in. I'm not enough. I don't deserve to be here. I know you've probably had some of those same thoughts, right? And by the end of the day, I would have been emotionally exhausted. I would have been convinced everyone saw me as a fraud. I probably would have picked a fight with my husband and or my stepdaughter on the way back about something totally unrelated because I needed somewhere to put that frustration and that pain. Does that sound familiar at all? Because that is what happens when we don't have the tools to catch these thoughts before they spiral. And that's what happens when we let that one small little moment, one missing word on a pen, define our entire experience and our sense of worth. It is so insidious. And the worst part of it is none of that has anything to do with reality. It would have been entirely about the story that I told myself about what other people were thinking about me. But when you are in that spiral, that story feels completely true. And I've had clients tell me they've ruined vacations because somebody at the hotel restaurant, assumed that the stepchild wasn't theirs, or they've cried in bathroom stalls at school events because they overheard someone ask, well, where's your mom? These moments hit us when we are the most vulnerable, in that space where we're already questioning whether we belong, whether we matter, whether we're enough. But I want you to understand, this is my big realization from the weekend, okay? That spiral is not inevitable. That story is not your only option. And you can catch that thought before you head down that path. So here's what happened to me. So there I was standing at parents' weekend, noticing I didn't have that pen, feeling that familiar whisper. I wonder if anybody else notices. And then something happened. I caught myself, not after an hour of spiraling, not after ruining my mood for the day. I caught that thought right there in the moment, and I chose a different one. A pen does not define my relationship with my sweet stepdaughter. That's it. That's the thought that changed everything that day. A pen does not define my relationship with my stepdaughter. And suddenly, it all shifted, right? Because when you sit with that truth, it becomes clear. She wanted me there. She specifically asked us both to come to Parents' Weekend. And I know she would have been really disappointed if I hadn't come. She introduces me to her friends. She's not embarrassed of me. She's excited to have me around. She brought her friends up here for spring break. She calls and asks my advice on things. She tells me her struggles. She celebrates her wins with me. That pen is just a stupid piece of metal. Is it a symbol? I don't know, sure. But it's not the thing itself, right? The thing itself is my relationship with her. And it's real. It's valuable. And it doesn't matter what accessory I'm wearing, right? You know what else hit me in that moment? Nobody's paying attention to whether I had a pin or not. Everybody's focused on their own kids, their own experiences, their own families, their own dramas, right? Because everybody's got it. The drama I could have created about this would have been entirely in my own head, stories that I am telling myself. And that is what growth looks like. And I'm really proud of that. It is not some dramatic transformation where you never feel triggered again, because girlfriend, those triggers are going to come. It is the ability to catch yourself in that moment and choose a different thought. Instead of, I don't belong here, I chose, I belong here. Instead of, does everybody know I'm not her real mom? I chose, my relationship with her is real. Doesn't matter what anyone else thinks. Instead of, I'm not enough, I chose, I am who she needs me to be in her life. And the great thing about that shift is that it wasn't forced and it wasn't fake. I wasn't trying to convince myself of something that wasn't true. I was just choosing to focus on what was actually true instead of what my insecurity was trying to make me believe. And that choice, that one small choice to think a different thought, changed my entire experience of the day, of the whole weekend, really. So here's what I want you to understand about this whole story, right? And about what happened in that moment is it's a fundamental shift from where I was looking for validation. The old me would have needed external proof that I belonged. I would have needed someone to tell me I was welcome. I would have needed to have that pin or some other form of outside validation to be okay about being there. But in this moment, I realized I already had everything I needed to feel secure in my place that weekend. It wasn't about what anyone else thought or said or did. It was about what I knew to be true about my relationship with my stepdaughter and my place in her life. And that is what emotional growth can look like in stepfamily life. It is the ability to ground yourself in your own truth instead of constantly looking for evidence of whether you're accepted or rejected. Does that mean you're never going to look for that evidence again? No, of course you are. But it's overall the ability to look for your own truth, right? It's developing a coherent sense of self. It's knowing who you are and what you bring to your family, regardless of how others respond to you. And that's a great place to be, especially if you're dealing with a high conflict ex or, kids that you're having a hard time building the relationship. It's knowing who you are and what you bring to the family, regardless of the kids, the ex, the women at school, the sorority pins, whatever else, right? And I want to tell you that shift does not happen overnight. And if you aren't there yet, you will be. But it takes time. And it can be the result of years of doing that inner work, setting the boundaries, having the hard conversations, and building confidence in your place, in your worth. It is learning how to catch those thoughts before they spiral. It takes time. It's practicing self-compassion when you do spiral, because it's going to happen. You're not going to be perfect. It's surrounding yourself with the people who do see you and who do validate your experience. But what was so great for me at that parents' weekend is it was proof positive that the work I have done in the last 10 years has paid off. I have actually changed. I have grown, and I'm no longer at the mercy of every small slight, every small reminder that, I'm different. The mantra that emerged from this experience was, I belong here. And I think that's a great mantra for stepmoms, because so often we feel like we are reminded that we don't belong, but you do. So what if every time when something happened, you just said, I belong here? Not because you have the right pin or the right title or the right relationship to the child, but because you are loved and you are valued and you are wanted, because you add something meaningful to your family, because your presence matters. So I would love to offer that mantra to you. Whatever situation you're walking into where you feel left out, you feel like you don't quite fit, you feel like an outsider, like everyone can see you're not the real thing, the real parent, the real mom, whatever that looks like, I want you to say to yourself, I belong here. Not as a way to convince yourself of anything that's not true, but as a way to remind yourself of what is true. You are not an accident in your stepfamily. You're not a mistake. You're not too much, and you're not enough. You belong here, right? There is the difference between being triggered and being reactive, and understanding that can be a game changer for stepmoms. Being triggered, like when there's a pin situation or when you're feeling left out, it is human. It is your nervous system responding to something that feels familiar in a painful way. I felt triggered when I didn't have the pin. My body had a response. My mind immediately went to, do I belong here? But being reactive, that's when you let that trigger drive your behavior. That's when you're making decisions from that triggered place. That's when you let that momentary feeling become your truth. What happened at Parents' Weekend is that I felt that trigger, but I didn't become reactive. I noticed the feeling, I acknowledged the feeling, and I consciously chose a different response. How would that feel to do? That's what emotional regulation looks like, right? It's not about never feeling triggered. You're gonna feel triggered. It's about creating space between the trigger and your response so that you can choose how to handle it, right? When you can notice and name what you're feeling without feeling totally overwhelmed, you can change your outcome. The old me would have been triggered, I would have spent the rest of the day reacting from that triggered place, from that place of hurt, creating stories, getting defensive, getting hurt, making assumptions. What happened this time? I felt triggered for about 30 seconds. I noticed it. I chose a different thought and I moved on. That's healing. That is what it looks like when you develop the ability to self-regulate in real time. And I want you to know that that skill is learnable. You are not stuck being reactive, and you can develop the ability to catch yourself before you spiral. You can learn to pause between the trigger and the response, and it takes practice, right? It takes self-compassion, which is hard. We're really hard on ourselves as stepmoms. It is absolutely possible. So I shared this story with you today because I wanted you to know that it does get better. Not in some magical fairy tale way where you never feel triggered again. I wish I could tell you that that was the case, but it's just not, right? But it gets better in real, tangible ways where the triggers don't own you anymore. Your stepmom journey does not have to be a series of emotional landmines, right? You can navigate this territory with confidence and with a sense of your own worth that doesn't depend on anyone else to validate you. But I want to repeat something I said earlier and be really clear about it. That growth does not happen by accident. It doesn't happen just because you've been a stepmom for 5 years or 10 years or whatever. It happens when you do the work. It happens because you start paying attention to your thoughts and patterns. It happens because you start practicing self-compassion instead of self-criticism. And that's really hard. We are really hard to ourselves. I always tell people we talk to ourselves in ways that we would never tolerate people speaking to our friends, our sisters, our mothers, the other women in our lives. For me, this growth has happened over the course of the last 10 years through a lot of coaching, a lot of therapy, through reading and learning and connecting with other stepmoms who could help me see that my feelings were valid and my struggles were normal. It happened by setting boundaries, even when they felt scary. It happened through having hard conversations, even when I didn't know how they were going to turn out, and learning to trust my instincts instead of always second guessing myself. And it happened through community, finding people who could say, that sounds really hard, instead of, have you tried loving them more? Or, well, they're not your kids anyway. I mean, I know y'all have heard that from somebody in your life through discovering like I wasn't the only one who felt like an outsider, right? So if you are in the thick of it right now, if you are in that place where every small slight feels like more evidence that you don't belong, I want you to know that that can be temporary. It does not have to be permanent. You don't have to suffer through it alone either. You don't have to wait for time to heal all wounds because time is not the magic elixir here. You can actively start working on developing the skills and the support systems that are going to help you get through these moments, right? You can catch this spiral before it catches you. You can develop a sense of your own worth that doesn't fluctuate. Doesn't matter whether you get the pin or the acknowledgement or the invitation. You can get to a place where you know deep in your bones that you belong in your family. The awesome thing about it is when you hit that point, it doesn't just change how you feel. It changes how you show up for the people that you love. When I was feeling constantly triggered and reactive, I guarantee that's the energy I brought into my family and my interaction. I guarantee my stepkids could sense it. I guarantee my husband had to manage my emotions around family events. And I was asking him essentially to help regulate my feelings instead of taking responsibility for my own emotional experience. But when I showed up grounded and secure, like I did at this parents' weekend, it creates space for everybody to not have to worry about my feelings. You know, my stepdaughter didn't have to worry about whether I was okay or whether she had to manage my feelings about a silly pin. She could just enjoy her parents' weekend. And I didn't even mention the pin to her, by the way. If she listens to this, it'll be the first time she hears about it because I didn't need to. she enjoyed Parents Weekend without having an added layer of, emotional caretaking, right? My husband didn't have to brace himself for a post-event processing session where I dissected every interaction and looked for evidence of being rejected by the other parents. He could enjoy the day, and we could both focus on celebrating being there with our stepdaughter, my stepdaughter, his daughter. This is a gift that you can give your family, right? You're no longer asking them to help you manage these triggers. And the amazing thing is, then you become more present for the connections that are available. I noticed so much more, I guarantee it, about that day because I wasn't spending all my mental energy analyzing whether or not I belonged there. My stepdaughter was proud to introduce us to her friends. She was happy. She had fun and included us in conversations. I had a great time talking to her friends' parents, and I think they were just happy to meet the people that love and support their daughter's friends. When you're not constantly looking for rejection, you're more available to connect, right? You can receive the love and affection that's being offered. That's what healing looks like. It's not getting rid of the triggers. It's having the choice in how you respond to them, right? It's having the choice in how you respond to them. You know what I love most about this whole story, as I was thinking about this and I knew I wanted to tell you about it, is that it is so ordinary. It is not some major life crisis. It's not some dramatic breakthrough moment. It's not, and I've had a lot of those too. I've told you about some of them. This is just like a regular day at a college event where something small happened that could have totally derailed me a few years ago. But that's kind of what makes it significant, because real life happens in those small moments, in those everyday interactions, those tiny triggers that can feel huge if we let them, right? Growth does not always come in with fanfare. Sometimes it's just the absence of drama. Sometimes it's just standing in a crowd of sorority moms and choosing peace instead of panic, right? And if you're thinking, oh my God, I would have totally spiraled, I'm so not there yet. Okay, that's normal. That's where I was too, right? I want you to know that getting there, getting to where you are unbothered, it is a real place and it is achievable. That sense of belonging that comes from within, you can develop it. And it starts with awareness. It starts with noticing when you're triggered. Pay attention to the stories that you are telling yourself in those moments. Get curious about the patterns instead of judging yourself for having them. The next time you go to a school event and look around and wonder what all the other moms think about you, what they're saying about you, what they know about you, what they've been told about you. What stories are you telling yourself? What triggers are going off, right? It comes with practice. It comes with trying different responses and being gentle on yourself when you slip back into those old patterns. But celebrating small wins, like choosing one different thought in one triggered moment, right? And it is sustained by community, by finding people who understand this journey, getting support when you need it, and having a place to process these experiences without judgment. This pin moment was proof to me that the work that I have done in the last 10 years, the therapy, the coaching, the boundary setting, building my community, that it's working. I'm changing, I'm growing as I help others. That same growth is absolutely available to you, right? Because you deserve to feel secure in your own worth. You deserve to walk into any room and know that you belong there, not because you have the right pin or the right title, but because you are valued and loved just as you are. So here's what I want you to do this week. The next time you feel that trigger, whether it's being left off an email from the school, not being included in a conversation, whatever that looks like, I want you to pause. I want you to take a breath and I want you to notice what you're feeling. Then I want you to ask yourself, what would it feel like to respond with, I belong here? You don't have to believe it completely at first. You don't have to feel it right away, right? But try it on. See what happens when you choose that thought instead of the one that says you're not enough. If you need support developing those skills, reach out to me. Help is available. I do coaching. We have a Step Family Circle membership that is full of women who are doing this work together, supporting each other every week through these triggers and celebrating the growth. You do not have to navigate this alone. You do not have to figure it out by yourself. And you definitely don't have to wait until you feel like you're perfect to start living life like you belong in your own family. So if this episode resonated with you, I hope you'll share it with another stepmom who needs to hear it. This is such an important issue. If you haven't left a review yet, please also take 2 minutes to do that. It helps other stepmoms find our community, and we need all the stepmoms to find us, right? So I will be back in your ears next week. And until then, remember, you have got this, and yes, you do belong. That's it for this week. If you've enjoyed our chat, I hope you'll help spread the word. Share this episode with friends and head on over to wherever you listen to podcasts and leave me a review. And don't forget, for more great stepmom content, head on over to thiscustomlife.com and follow me on social media. Just search This Custom Life on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and Pinterest. Until next time, you keep being you and know that we are in this together. See you here next week.